Doctors and nurses of Reddit who have delivered babies to mothers who clearly cheated on their husbands. What was that like? We had a very sweet blonde-haired blue-eyed mom and dad along with their entire extended family in the room for a delivery one busy afternoon at work. Think aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma and grandpa too. The baby is born and as the doctor places her on the mom's chest the first words out of her mouth are, "That's not my baby. That's not my baby." The baby in question, still attached to the umbilical cord, has beautiful dark curly black hair and dark skin. The nurse looks at her and tells her that this is definitely her baby because she's still attached to you, and she, not so quietly, tells the nurse there's no way. "I never slept with a black man. It's not mine." The father is standing there silent, not sure what to do. A long awkward silence fills the room. We clean her and baby up as cheerfully as we can. We see the extended family filter out of the room and the father leave to get a cigarette. About 10 minutes later a tall black guy walks up to our front desk asking how to get to the patient in question's room. I was assisting at a cesarean when I was a junior doctor. The woman's dark-skinned partner had been in prison 9 months or so. I took the baby immediately upon delivery and announced cheerily it's a boy. Her first words were, "Is it black?" Luckily the baby was a mocha color that could have gone either way, and I told her in a mildly confused manner, "It could be." Paramedic here. Our crew delivered a full berth in the back of our rig. We have 2 paramedics in the back with the PT, a driver, and I'm working on the laptop listening to info they are telling me to add to the report. All of a sudden, it goes kind of quiet. I hear the mother let out a very loud "Oh crap, it's not white." She was very white. A few more seconds of silence, and I'm like, the driver alarm, beeping light on the center console sent from a button in the back, was pressed 2 times quickly, generally meaning to turn around to get info for the report. I turn from the front passenger seat to see a very dark skin colored baby, I'm guessing Cuban. I can't see the mother's face, but all I see is her shaking her head. She begins to worry, saying that her husband is meeting us there at the hospital. He can't see this. I just continue the report, and I'm not sure what the problem is, but I guess we'll see when we get there. Flash forward to the air. We stop outside the ambulance bay. I get out to open the doors, and I'm met by another very white heavy-set guy in a uniform shirt, dress pants and glasses. Asked me if his wife was in there and she was in labor when he was coming home. Hospital policy dictates that we can't have random people that we can't confirm identity that close to the rig when opening doors for PT safety. Security is there quick, holds him back a bit. We open the doors, roll the PT and her newborn out. He takes one look, sees the color of the baby, jaw drop, look of despair, like a 1,000-yard stare. Even security had a look like, wow, that woman freaked up, and this guy knows it now. Wife, babe, I can explain every bit of this. I know it looks weird, but I can. We wheel her into a no sign of husband. Last I knew, the husband didn't check into the hospital as a visitor. I'm assuming he went home to pack his stuff. When I was born, my mom legitimately thought I was black since I came out mostly purplish. One heart problem and a few days later I was the palest baby in the world. My mom was confused and my dad almost walked out. Okay, I am a nurse, but this isn't a story about a birth I witnessed. It was my own birth. And although my mother definitely didn't cheat, all the midwives were convinced she had. And yet it'll be buried, but I think it's a funny story so I'm going to share. For background, my mother, J, is white and had got married young to another white guy, D, actually forced by my grandparents who were horrified she was living in sin. Their relationship petered out and they separated but remained very good friends. Then she met my father, A black man, and began a relationship with him. Mum was still married at the time. Neither her nor her husband were in a hurry to get divorced, and he became good friends with Mum's new partner, my dad. Mum fell pregnant with me. Time moves along. She goes into labor and needs to head up to the hospital. Dad was working and couldn't make it home in time to get her there, so still being good friends with the husband, she rings him and he comes around to drive her to hospital and decides to hang out until I'm born. After an hour or so Dad arrives. He was freaking out a bit, so his best friend, H, also a black guy, drove him because Dad didn't trust himself. They arrive at the hospital right as Mum is ready to deliver. The midwives come out to the waiting room to grab the husband to be there when baby is born. They knew that mum's actual husband, D, had driven her there, so assumed that he was the father of the baby. Went and grabbed him and tried to drag him into the delivery room. He freaked out and yelled, "No, I'm not the father, I'm just the husband. The father is Aboriginal." Dad and H pulled up into the car park as this is happening, and Dad leaps out of the car, decides he needs to have a quick smoke to settle his nerves before he goes in. His best friend H doesn't smoke cigarettes but does smoke weed and is pretty stoned, so he walks in ahead. Just then the midwives come running back to the waiting room to grab the actual father, and see the only black guy in there. Obviously him, right? So they take him and suit him up to bring him down to delivery. Being pretty stoned, H doesn't question this and just goes along with it. The midwives reach the delivery room and shove him inside. Mum, legs in stirrups and at the pushing stage goes absolutely ballistic. "Not that black guy, he's not the father, go get the other one." The midwives hustle H out and return him to the waiting room to wait with D. My dad has come inside by now and the midwives marched up to him and said something like, "I hope you're the father this time, otherwise I'm going to just give up and she can birth alone." So that's the story about how the hospital went through 3 different men before they finally got to my actual father. That would be a fantastic comedy sketch. Paramedic here. Had a mother give birth to a healthy baby in a home. Situational awareness had not helped me yet at this point. I asked if the father was here to cut the cord. We paramedics usually shy away from this duty because it opens us up to unwanted legal ramifications should something go wrong. There was a calm in the air after I asked the question and went on to do it myself. Come a few moments later, I was approached by another occupant of the home who informed me that this was a home for victims of physical assault and that the father of the baby was indeed also the father of the mother and was currently incarcerated due to the aforementioned situation. It was an awkward ride to the hospital after that. Dang, this must have been awkward. For her it must be like rubbing salt on the wound. Consulted a couple who were expecting a baby and were confused about how she had chlamydia again. Turns out they both had chlamydia. Both got treated and continued doing their thing. She could not get her head around how she had it again if he was the only guy she had slept with. He just looked very sheepish as I tried to subtly explain maybe he had caught it from elsewhere and passed it on. Took a long time for the penny to drop. One of those couples where you realize the kid won't get help with their science homework from their parents. So a friend of mine, he is unfortunately dead, had cancer and he was dating a girl for about 2 years. He then discovered he had cancer and that he would live at best 1 more year. His girlfriend announced to him a week later that she was pregnant. They were both white. He kept on saying that life is a joke. He was happy because he would have a baby now but sad because he would die in a year. Anyway, 9 months later the baby was born and it was black. He then disappeared 4 weeks and we learned that he had died a month later. Felt so freaking sorry. Dang, what a shame to die with that on your mind. Had 2 women give birth a few days apart on my floor. Turns out they actually had the same baby daddy. The father of the 2 newborns got both patients pregnant around the same time. It was an interesting day for the social worker. In high school my gym teacher was married to the biology teacher, who was also really good friends with my math teacher. Always saw them chatting and walking together. Well, the bio teacher got pregnant and when she brought the baby in there was an unignorable resemblance to the math teacher. Her husband ended up driving to the nearest hospital and shooting himself dead in the parking lot. It was a big scandal at our relatively small private school. One of a few actually. Holy frick, that escalated quickly. Did not see that coming. I know a guy who is fully white. His parents are both white and his younger sister is black. I always assumed she was adopted and one day when I mentioned it, he looked at me weirdly and was like, "No dude, that's my full blood sister." Obviously I didn't believe it, and apparently neither did his dad at the birth. But they got the paternity test and she was his daughter. Likelihood is they've got some black ancestors far enough back to be forgotten about. I also know a dude who has a white Scottish mum and a black Jamaican dad. Dude came out pale white with a ginger afro. Genetics were not on his side. When you give birth to Napoleon Dynamite. This isn't exactly what you are looking for, but my mom is black and my dad is white. My mom had kids with her first husband who were black, and they were born somewhat light-skinned, which is common among black children. So she was expecting this, but when she gave birth to my eldest full brother she thought something was wrong because of how pale he was. Nurse said that happens and he will get color. Fast forward to when it's time for them to go home. The nurses that are now on duty refused to let her go because obviously there had been some sort of mix up. She was literally accused of trying to steal a white baby, and even with my dad there apparently, this kid was still too white to be mixed race. This was the early 80s, so crazy stuff went down in hospitals. Mind you, we lived in an area where mixed race families were non-existent at the time. Another fast forward 16 years, and my brother has a mountain biking accident and at B, he is literally hanging on by a thread. His friend calls and my mom rushes over to the hospital. His friend is literally there saying yes, this is his mom and she has her id, bro didn't have an id though, and they are refusing to let her in. They ask for clarification if he is adopted or something, but apparently, the truth was the wrong answer. The hospital security escorted her out and she had to have my dad come, who by the way was just let right in. I highly doubt under any other circumstance they would erroneously not let a parent see their injured child because they don't look like them, but my mom being black with a very light skinned child was apparently an issue. But anyway, back to the question. I wonder how many families have had drama thanks to genetics being so unpredictable. If my mom was white with a black husband, I am certain everyone would think she cheated on my dad with a white guy. Heck, people even accuse my mom of using an egg donor. Sometimes genes even skip generations, so a trait that hasn't popped up in a few generations can just randomly show up. This lady at my church is a white female married to a white male. They have one younger kid who is the spitting image of his dad and obviously white. Then, they have an older kid that is quite visibly mixed. The kid has dark brown skin and curly African American hair and nonetheless looks nothing like the dad. So this lady claims that when she gave birth the hospital gave her baby a shot that turned him black. Therefore, we refer to this kid as Blackshot. Feel bad for the kid, but he truly believes the story and is in like 7th grade. A new one for the anti-vaxxers to get behind. I do have a story about a close call of this nature. So, a few years ago I responded to an ad of the NSW nature. I was feeling adventurous of a request for a man to fulfill a cuckold fantasy. Basically they wanted a man who looked similar to the boyfriend of the couple to frick the girlfriend while the boyfriend watched. There was a whole act about it. She'd call me by his name. I'd act clearly different and had more libido than him. Let the lie slip up a few times and badly cover it up, which she'd buy at 100%. You know, make a whole act about it. Like playing out a P script. Anyway, the deed is done and 9 months later I get a call from the girlfriend. She's pregnant and expecting within the week. And they're worried I might be the father. I did use a condom but she wasn't on the pill and the paranoia was understandable. Also they hadn't made love for a week before and a couple weeks after, so the timing matched up. The baby came out. Either of us could be the father as it looks vaguely like both of us. It was a boy BTW. Naturally it was freaking tense and awkward as heck. It took a week for the DNA test to get back. The delay was agonizing. Thankfully it came back that I was in the clear. There was actually a bit of a celebration. When I got the word I cheered. They hugged. I gave them a handshake and a hug. Said my congratulations. Went home and drank a whole dang bottle of Absolute vodka to celebrate. I don't know why, but I wanted this story to end with, and then we celebrated and I had round 2. Anesthesiologist here. C-sections are typically done under spinal anesthesia, and we're the ones at the head of the table keeping the mother calm and talking her through the procedure while the surgeons operate. I've seen it more than once, but I remember one in particular when the parents were both very Caucasian, and the baby was very much not. The actual father obviously had to be very dark-skinned. At delivery, when the not father saw the baby he just looked down at his wife, who was starting to cry, and calmly said, "You freaking W," and walked out. She started screaming for him to come back, but there wasn't much she could do since she was, you know, still being operated on. She lost it to the point I eventually had to sedate her just a bit because she was in danger of injuring herself. As far as I know her husband never came back to the hospital. I don't know what happened after that. Baby was white on the ultrasound, so she thought she was in the clear. A friend of mine tells the story of his aunt giving birth in the 1970s or 80s. to a baby that at first glance appeared to be of Asian descent. Aunt and her husband are both Caucasian Midwesterners from long lines of the same sort. Going back to Germany, there was evidently a shock moment, and then the aunt's father, my friend's grandfather, quipped, "Well, they say 1 in 7 babies is born Chinese," and everyone laughed. The tension broke. Long enough for the doctor, also a white Midwesterner of German stock, said that likely the kid's color is just off due to the events of the birth. That baby is now a man in his 30s or 40s, and looks like your typical Midwesterner. He just had some tinge to his skin for a few hours following the birth, plus some dark hair at birth that has since lightened up. Jaundice. Not a doctor, but if I remember correctly, it is due to the baby's immune system going haywire during birth. They put babies under a blue lamp for up to 24 hours to make it go away. Bit reversed. I mixed from a very dark black man and a Mexican woman on the lighter side, barely passing. Well, my dad and mom didn't work out, but I was made he ditched 2 weeks in and everything. She then got together with my stepdad about 2 months later. Long-time friends. And he knew she was pregnant. Break the news of being pregnant to the family. Everyone is excited, but no one knows it's not the super white man's child. So cut to my birth. I come out clearly way too dark. Not charcoal, but something is missing on how. No one in that room knew but my mom, stepdad and grandparents. I'm told it was a very awkward conversation. Skin color or not, my stepdad has always claimed me as blood, knowing full well I'm not, and I couldn't have lucked out harder. No idea what the doctors thought, but I had a phone call from the wife asking for my blood type while they were in the hospital the next day, and I ducked home. I'm A. The wife is O. Bub is A+. I've done enough science to know where that's going. Have done DNA testing. I'm 100% the dad. Still not sure how to get more interesting science info about the myriad markers that apparently exist. My brother had a surprise baby this way. He and a co-worker had a one-night stand while she was broken up with her ex. She gets back with her ex. Ends up pregnant. Flash forward to the delivery day. The day my brother sends me a picture of a random baby out of the blue and says, "I think I am a dad." She is white. Her boyfriend is black. My brother is white. Baby came out looking very white. I don't know how it went down in the hospital room, but I know they separated very soon after. My brother went to visit her in the hospital and asked her if she would let him take a paternity test. She agreed and it came back positive a week later. And that's how I got my surprise nephew. My so and I just had our first in January. He has brown hair and I'm blonde. When she arrived, the nurse exclaimed, "Wow, look at that red hair." We know it's a recessive gene, but it wasn't the very first thing we expected to hear. We looked at each other for a moment and I said, in my drugged and exhausted post-labor stupor, "I swear she's yours." Little different twist. I am Ukrainian. My great-grandfather was Crimean Tatar, who are mixed Turkic and Mongolian. My wife is Ukrainian and Italian. My first boy was blonde. My second was dark-haired, dark-skinned, and has the classic almond-shaped Asiatic eyes. Mongolian spot. Despite the fact that we know my family history, we ordered a test to make sure there was no separation at birth. Stuff. C-section. Yep, that's our boy. You would never know looking at us that that boy is genetically related to us, and we love him to pieces. My 2 boys have heavily hooded eyes, almond-shaped. They look like blonde blue-eyed Asians. I've actually had Asian people ask me if they are half Asian. They are not. My husband and I are both German and Norwegian descent, but their paternal great-grandpa had the same eyes, so it's definitely a family trait. Not exactly cheating, but definitely an awkward situation. During my OB rotation in med school, I was caring for a patient with a very large family, the kind that all wanted to be part of the delivery process from beginning to end. They were having a baby girl, and the room was absolutely filled from wall to wall with pink presents, bassinets, blankets, clothing, embroidered quilts, you name it. Anyways, I deliver the baby and I'm horrified, thinking there was some sort of mutation in the baby's cooch. After my initial shock, I realized it was simply a perfectly normal looking baby dong and testicles. The "congrats, it's a boy" was met with shock instead of excitement initially, but then everyone was so happy after understanding he was perfectly healthy. Apparently, even with good prenatal care, you can miss the male genitalia on ultrasounds about 1% of the time. P. I'm of Irish descent, extremely pale, freckled, wavy dark hair and darker green eyes. My husband is half Native American, half German, dark hair and slightly wavy as well. My daughter came out with light brown curly hair and ever so slight strawberry blonde pieces mixed throughout. Curls for days. And the nurse goes, "Wow, where did you get that hair?" Knowing I had similar color as a baby and my mother has kinky curly hair, my husband, in a room full of nurses, goes, "I don't know, jaded. Where did she get that hair?" I could have freaking killed him. Super awkward for everyone involved. The husband was only in the room for a bit then left and didn't see him again. The father of baby, showed up after the baby was born. I've also had where they didn't know whose baby it was, so both guys were present to see who they thought it was. You have been visited by the ingenious Joe. Comment brain so you always see the glass half full. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.